nation, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Thank you so very much, my fellow colleagues and ladies and gentlemen. I am humbled and overwhelmed by the applause. Thank you so very much, since I joined my fellow colleagues and ladies and gentlemen. I am humbled and overwhelmed by the applause. I accept all this in the name of the people of Liberia, to whom I am grateful for giving me the opportunity to lead them at this critical time in our history. It is a serious responsibility indeed, and I'm under no illusions that the road to success will be easy. But I'm convinced, fellow colleagues, that with your help and your guidance, I will be able to deliver on the promises that I have made to the Liberian people, the promises that are intended to address their pain and suffering, lift them from poverty, and create a conducive environment in which their dreams and aspirations will be realized. My fellow colleagues, I see in each and every one of you as my big brother. I look forward to working with you in a spirit of solidarity. I would like to take this time on behalf of my country, Liberia, to thank the AU members countries for electing the oldest independent African state, Liberia, on the Peace and Security Council. It means a lot for Liberia, peace and security. One of the original founders of the Organization of African Unity, today called the African Union, the AU. I look forward to working with you as we all strive together to maintain peace on our continent in order to provide the security and stability that each and all of our countries need to grow and prosper. Fellow colleagues, I regret not being able to start or stay longer for this summit due to pressing duties of state, because I am sure that I and my government will have benefited immensely from the discussion on the most important theme of the conference, winning the fight against corruption, a sustainable path to Africa's transformation. Corruption is a plague that seems to present itself in all of our countries and manifest itself in many forms throughout the body politics. It saves our energy, hinders our progress and development, and makes it difficult for our people to reach their true and fullest potential. It is also a major threat to the peace and security of our countries and their respective regional economic communities. I am convinced that the discussion which took place during this 30th summit will have strengthened our resolve and political will to tackle the challenge of corruption with all our resources and bring it under control, particularly through institutional transformation. The declaration of 2018 as the anti-corruption year by this conference will certainly serve to increase national, regional, and continental awareness of the menace and improve our chances to totally eradicate. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, for the excellent arrangements that were made for our safety and comfort. I want to use the occasion to thank President Alpha Conde for his great leadership, and also want to thank of you, Excellency, for giving us the opportunity to attend this summit. May God above bless Africa and unite us. Thank you.
The acclamation on the pronunciation of your name is sufficient to welcome you, and therefore you are the only African who played professional football in Europe. And we wish you success in your new functions, with it ECOWAS and African Union, and to help you in your new role. Welcome among us. We now have two presidents who are here that did not have to participate. I'd like to give the floor to President of Benin and the President of Somalia. So, Francis Talon, President of Benin. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President of the African Union, the Chairperson of the African Union, ladies and gentlemen, presidents, heads of state and of governments, heads, institutions, international organizations and regional organizations, as it's never too late to do good. I wish on behalf of the people of Benin and its leaders, including myself, recognize and to express to the African Union our attachment as well as our support for the role that our organization plays for the humanity, for the good of humanity in the continent and for peace and security in the world. I wish to personally convey to the Assembly my commitment to work for better performance of our organization and our collective good. I wish to pay tribute to one and all for the environment that we have within our organization in the service of our commitment, our common commitment to the service of our ambition, so that our continent is better and plays its role in the whole world and in the universe, as well as in the kingdom of the humanity. For the last, Mr. President, when I attended your meetings, I realized how much our organization is useful, and therefore I wish to invite one and all to leave no stone unturned and to deploy all efforts, because sometimes we may feel from outside that there's no efficiency within our organization, but as I've been here, I've realized how it's so important and useful to be part of this organization, and I thank you. Thank you, dear brother of Benin, and welcome. I hope that you'll be regular, you'll be attending our summits regularly. I'd like to give the President of Somalia, is absent right now, but he will definitely have an opportunity to take the floor later.
Could you please put back for some time? My President is engaged with another duties, and he will be here within 5 minutes. Thank you.
Excellency, heads of state and government of the African Union, Excellency Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, President of the Palestinian and Chairman of the Executive Committee of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, Excellencies, ambassadors, heads of diplomatic missions and international organization, without forgetting the former presidents and presidents of the OAU and the African Union, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to, first of all, thank Prime Minister of Ethiopia for the very warm welcome extended to all the delegations, and I wish to particularly indicate my happiness at seeing so many heads of state who have attended, who then responded that in order to render our organization serious, and they have attended. I wish to express my condolences to Kabare and of Mali following the attacks, terrorist attacks, and also our support to President Obiang, who was a victim of a tentative of destabilization by mercenaries. So today I come to an end to the term of my presidency that you conferred upon me. Allow me to thank you for your support and for the year 2017. On behalf of your name, I wanted to set up a new dynamism to move from rhetoric to action and promises to concrete and tangible results. I then took upon the imperative that it's important for us to stay together, to talk with one voice and to act together in concert for a better management and to take on board our concerns. This actually was successful because we were able to get the election of our brother as the Director General of the WHO. We were also able to send and to make known our concerns, because the investments in youth, not only in the migration, we were very proud the way this summit was organized. I also would like to say that this summit in Abidjan was better organized than the last one in Brussels, which shows that Africa is completely capable and does not need to be have any complexity in regards to other. I wish to thank all the heads and state of government who worked together for the realization of the work program of the last year, the members of the Executive Council, as well as the staff and the Commission of the African Union. I wish to congratulate the champions. It was not clear, but each of the member states who were champions showed their commitment and illustrated this in different occasions. I wish to thank them, that those that will have new champions coming on board will do the same. I wish to thank Ethiopia for the constant availability and hospitality that is always there for us. I wish to thank our partners for their support to our initiatives, and those that do not spare any efforts to help us in our support, and our brother and the Secretary General of the United Nations. The year that has just ended was marked by several challenges. The implementation of the reform that's against a difficult backdrop, and which clearly shows the new Africa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in 2017, I took part in several fora where I had to defend our priorities and our role on the international scene, with a population that and between China and India, about $3 billion. No one can, $33 billion. No one can ignore us anymore, be it on the G20 or peace and security meetings. It was again the importance of transformation and the respect of our sovereignty. I have never hesitated to say that the difficulties that our countries face are due to foreign interventions. And we are the ones that have to suffer from that. So which is why it's important that Africa takes its destiny in her hands and to ensure that the programs should be funded by the Africans, even though we may have support from others, and that it's first of all a responsibility. We are conscious that we have been able to go through a path that has been appreciable, but this is just a beginning of a development road that is still long to go to help our people benefit from the resources that spill out generously from our continent, and that we no longer fall victims to the situations. I'd like to congratulate the democratic dividend and that the future is towards the future of the collective, and we do know the youth is ambitious. We would like to create a space and to enable the youth's growth. The appeals that have been, there have been about 40 countries within Africa that already undertook the important measures for the demographic profile, which will help create investments in our country. The aggravation of the situation of migration and the daylight exposure of slavery requires for us actions that are concrete and targeted. This is our responsibility as well. We know that we criticize our partners in their responsibility, but we also need to recognize that here, if as heads of state we're able to find, employment for our young people, as Ghana has done recently, then our youth would not be leaving, would not be going away. So we are now heads of state who are responsible, and not a club of those that are patting each other on the back. It is very important to accuse others, but we need to see our own responsibility face to face. Immigration of our young to of our youth through these atrocious situations, which are very important, and we need to be seized of this. In the same vein, the implementation of the initiative of the recruitment on the continent also calls on to improve our health situation on the continent of women and youth. So we need to ensure that we are conscious that it's in unity and utilization of our means that Africa can draw benefit through, in a democratic manner, come out in a developed and successful manner. Our commitment to establish should be consolidated, the free trade area, continental free trade area. Africa is the only continent that can bring together all the other all the countries. No other continent has been able to do so. So we'd like to congratulate the minister, the president of Niger, who've handled this very successfully. This is very important to do this, and it's an excellent initiative for all of us. All the positions indicate that our market will increase and our industrialization will be on the right path. 2017, we should finalize. We were able to finalize the discussions, and the heads of state should now follow this closely. It is close, and we can be able to sign this agreement, the continental free trade area. The most important one is the new mechanism for financing of our organization. We need to follow this very closely, because this is the most sure way for us to resolve our chronic budget deficit. We have realized that a certain number of member states fully adhere to the need to reform our organization and to provide a financial autonomy for our organization, because we are not able to talk of one voice if we continue to depend on external financial aid. And we know that in dialogue and we'll be able to iron out little differences. That's mostly due to so more than 20 countries have already contributed and implemented this financing, and another 10 have started engaging in this démarche. So on your own behalf, and for those that are not working with the ministers of finance to iron out the different matters, I fully understand the concerns that have been expressed by member states, and I call upon them to work on the follow-up group, and that we have already unanimously approved. And it is our willingness to talk together, work together, and to move towards this sacred value. It is through this that we'll be able to come out of this dependency, and at least to reduce it considerably, while at the same moment maintaining the mutual consideration with our partners. And this will be credible partners. That is to say that our partners should have the relationship with us from sovereign state to sovereign state, because we have to have a win-win cooperation. We actually are not ready for lectures anymore, and that if we have issues of governance, these are so we see at what time sometimes the issues of polls keep on changing. So those that they do not even know what their people are thinking can come and start lecturing us about that. Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, our continent continue to remain the theater of conflicts, despite all the efforts that we have done, and particularly the deficiency in governance, particularly in corruption, continue to minimize the development. Indeed, we have taken conscience of this, and President Buhari has shown his commitment, and we do know as a champion he'll continue to help fight against this plague. And then the chart of elections, and will continue to promote peace and stability in our country. That is the Silence the Guns initiative in 2020, and should be followed. For us, we have to elaborate in the time to resolve crisis in Africa for peace, stability, and order, which can bring about chaos, which is why the setting up of G5 is a determination of the Africa to take its destiny in its hand. We have seen that even if we support the peacekeeping of the UN, we have seen that these sometimes are not very efficient. We have 20,000 peacekeeping troops, and there's been very little results. How would you expect that Bangladesh and somebody from another country is going to come and die on the soils of Africa? It has to be Africa. It's to defend. It's Africans that can defend their land, which is why we need to support G5 and to ensure that between 2020 and by taking our responsibilities, they are member states: Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, South Africa, who have the logistical means. That says that if we have to fight, our troops do not have to wait for others to come in from outside. They can particularly start with the military logistical support, as Morocco illustrated that recently by sending to go and free our brothers who are suffering from slavery. So we need to unite our efforts and get together, conjugate, and put in concert all our actions, and to fight fight against terrorism. So we need to have an African front supported by regional economic communities that are good, that already have the first-hand information in the resolution of conflicts. So with the Security Council, I am convinced that the Security Council will take this on board and respect our positions when it comes to the resolution of African conflicts, and that in this way I wish to express delight at the signature of a strategic partnership with the United Nations and the responsibility and role of Africa in operations and peacekeeping missions in the continent. Dear colleagues, and I would not conclude my statement without reiterating the necessity to follow with ardor and with vigor the rationalization of our work methods and of our organs as well. I wish we had appointed the head of state, President Kagame, and we would not have found a better time than to have President Kagame, and wish to also thank him and would like to congratulate President Sisi for 2019. Long live Africa, long live African unity. I thank you.
Nous allons donc donner la parole à notre frère de...
Now we're going to give out the floor to our brother, the President of Somalia.
Excellency, Chairperson of African Union, His Excellency Alpha Condé, heads of states and governments, Chairperson of African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki. I wanted to thank you very, very much for this warm welcome. It's indeed an honor for me to be among you all, brothers and sisters. I would like to assure you that Somalia is ready to take its rightful place in African Union. It's a great privilege to be addressing you on this year's theme of winning the fight against the corruption. African Union is right to mark 2018 as the African Anti-Corruption Year. We agree a sustainable path to African transformation relies on winning the battle against the crippling and corrosive corrupt practices and their perpetrators. The African continent is the richest, yet our people are the poorest. The majority of our countries and citizens still rely on foreign aid. This is not sustainable and will keep us dependent. One of the key challenges and opportunities to end poverty and conflict is to tackle corruption directly and purposefully. To achieve this goal, we must meaningfully cooperate in this struggle so that we can build the Africa we want to achieve progress and prosperity for our people. In Somalia, our government is absolutely and truly committed to fighting corruption. In addressing it, the Council of Ministers has recently passed the anti-corruption law. We have also strengthened public financial management system and processes, including public procurements and anti-money laundering laws. Our greatest insurance against and development can be financed if corruption is tackled effectively on the African continent. My government has already started this uphill battle, and I'm confident we will succeed, given that our values and intentions are in line with the envisaged in the African Union Vision 2063. And I thank you all.
Merci, le président de la Somalie.
Thank you, President of Somalia. Thank you, Chairperson. Consultations undertaken concerning the Bureau of the Assembly for 2018. Your Excellency, Chairperson, before I get there, allow me, first of all, on behalf of all my colleagues, members of the Permanent Representatives Committee, to carry out a duty. That is one of wishing you all a happy new year and wish you success, health in all your endeavors. Having done this, allow me now, according to tradition, as the Dean, to make a few introductory remarks. Your Excellency, Mr. Chairman, as we open the 30th ordinary session of the Assembly, my distinguished colleagues and myself are convinced that Africa and the African Union, we are stepping into a critical phase of our history. The incoming Bureau will definitely going to take up its responsibility in a very particular context for our continent. That is a context of reform, which is the key subject of this session. And we think that the success of our reform will depend on us, and also because the international community is actually sending a lot of challenges to us. You must have, you do understand what I mean, the humiliating treatment that Africans are witnessing out there. Thousands of Africans do die in the Sahara Desert, or they sink to the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea as they all seek to run away or to flee from the African continent. Most of the time, they land in the nets of human traffickers. And this definitely affects the dignity of our continent, the dignity of our respective countries and our people. Under you, I want to say that we need to rebrand our image, and we also have to ensure that we strengthen the relationship between Africa and other continents. The Africa that we want, an emerging Africa, a winning Africa. It's not an Africa with miserable youth. You all know that we want to invest in our youth. We want to invest in our youth because we know that this continent should be. It is said that this continent is one where corruption is rife. And so you understand our reason for trying to win the fight against corruption and to make it the theme for the year. Your Excellency, Mr. President, concerning reforms, very respectfully, I'd like to highlight the fact that its success will depend on the decisions and also on the courage and determination that African countries will implement the proposals made by President Kagame, the champion of the reforms. And he actually said so this morning, he actually said so in January 2017, that the reform will start with you and end with you. That is, you'll have to show guidance in terms of implementing our policies. It is your responsibility to do so. The PRC, that is, the PRC has mandates, and the members of the PRC will, as always, make sure that they implement whatever responsibilities you will give them, and they will continue to support the African Union Commission in its mission. And so, Mr. Chairman, this is the message that my distinguished colleagues, the ambassadors and representatives of African countries, have asked me to convey to you. I hope that I did not betray them. Mr. Chairman, the results of the consultations, according to the results, the chair of the Assembly for 2018 will be His Excellency Mr. Paul Kagame, President of the Republic of Rwanda. And still in the Bureau, the first vice chairperson will be His Excellency Faiz El Sarraj, President of the Presidential Council of Libya, representing the North African region. Second Vice Chairperson, His Excellency Jacob Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa, representing the Southern region. Third Vice Chair, His Excellency Denis Sassou Nguesso, President of the Republic of Congo, representing the Central African region. Fourth Vice Chair and Rapporteur, His Excellency Mr. Alpha Condé, the President of Guinea, representing West Africa. So, Mr. Chairman, this is the composition of the Bureau for the year 2018. You also elected President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of the Arabic Republic of Egypt. He's been elected as Chair of the Union for 2019. My congratulations to President Paul Kagame for his election and to the other members of the Bureau. I thank you all for your indulgence and I thank you for your attention. I thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we now know the outcome of the consultations. And so I'm going to give the floor to His Excellency, the President Alpha Condé.
Oui, vous avez passé plutôt le président Kagame.
You were supposed to give the floor to President Paul Kagame.
Non, nous nous félicitons.
Anyway, we do welcome President Paul Kagame, who is championing the institutional reforms, and trust me, we're going to accompany him and also work with him within the Troika. And so we're going to call on President Paul Kagame to come to the rostrum.
Il me soit donc permis d'inviter très...
I'd like to invite His Excellency President Kagame to make his acceptance statement.
Excellencies, heads of state and government, and first ladies, Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, President of the PLO, His Excellency Mahmoud Abbas, Secretary General of League of Arab States, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of our African Union Commission, Excellencies, former heads of state and former leaders of organizations, heads of institutions and senior officials, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, it is a solemn honor to accept the call to serve as chairperson of our union. Thank you for your double trust, first as the leader of the reform process, now as the chairperson of our union. I promise to do this with you and will do the best job I can. Obviously, I will need your full support. President Alpha Conde is a professor, a teacher, and I can safely say I have learned from him. I have also seen him his very big heart for Africa. Congratulations, Mr. President. Please join me in paying tribute to his impeccable service to our organization. In fact, I have also been lucky before that to work with his predecessor, President Idris Deby, and even more lucky to work with both of them. And I want to assure you, I had a lot of wisdom coming and flowing from them. I thank both of them. Africa's defining challenge is to create a pathway to prosperity for our people, especially young people. Elsewhere, this has been achieved through industrialization, but the growth trajectory that transformed Asia is not necessarily any longer a viable option for Africa simply because we waited too long to act. Technology has evolved so rapidly in recent years that Africa's window to follow that strategy is narrowing much more rapidly than previously understood. We are running out of time, and we must act now to save Africa from permanent deprivation. Scale is essential. We must create a single continental market, integrate our infrastructure, and infuse our economies with technology. No country or region can manage on its own. We have to be functional, and we have to stay together. The financial and institutional reform of the African Union derives all of its agency from these realities. Fortunately, Africa has assets and strengths to build on, starting with this organization and its tangible commitment to unity. This is an advantage which no other region of the world possesses in such abundance. Unity must be our starting point as we do the necessary work of redefining our plans and ambitions in continental terms. These changes need to happen. There is no country on our continent that does not want to be part of a more assertive and visible Africa. The programs, policies, and priorities of the African Union contain the right tools for the job. I wish to pay tribute to previous leaders of the African Union and to former heads of state for paving the way forward. There is tremendous value in African Union's flagship initiatives, such as Agenda 2063. Because of their foresight, we are in a position to adopt 3 historical agreements that are of the highest importance for building Africa's wealth from within. Today, we will launch the single African air transport market. This is a major step forward for transportation. We are nearly ready to adopt the Continental Free Trade Area. It really needs to be done this year. Freedom of movement of people in Africa is equally important, and it is achievable in 2018. By committing to break down these barriers, we will send a tremendous signal in Africa and beyond that it is no longer business as usual. Our people deserve a brighter future. Their sacrifice and hard work should be rewarded with better lives for families and communities. We are thankful to the heads of state who champion important themes and priorities of the Union at every summit. I ask that we pay careful attention to their reports and act on the recommendations offered. This is work they are doing on behalf of all of us. I wish to commend the efforts of the African Union's professional staff, which often goes unheralded. Your hard work and talent are greatly valued. We do not say this often enough. We are going to be asking you to do even more going forward. Soon enough, we will also have the funds to support the African Prosperity Agenda. The levy on eligible imports is being implemented. The golden rules were recently approved by the finance ministers, and we have a more credible budget process in place. We have in some ways in the past helped perpetuate the narrative that Africa is a burden. This way of thinking has been around for years. Fixing it won't take a year, but it need not take more decades either. None of us would be wrong to be angry about the time and the potential we have lost in regard to who we are and should be. But at the stage we are, we should choose to respond with the focus and facts in order to refocus our common humanity. I wish to close with a message to Africa's young people. Elders should be able to enjoy the pleasure of telling you how hard they had it at your age, so you don't take things for granted and are inspired to work even harder. However, too many Africans come of age in the same conditions as their parents and grandparents, and sometimes the hardships endured are even worse. Our job is to make sure that every generation in Africa enjoys a better life than the previous one. Young Africans are also professional men and women, and you have a full role to play. We cannot build Africa without you. For women especially, we need to unreservedly accord them their rights and their rightful role. I thank you. Before we begin, once again, Excellencies, heads of state and government, heads of delegation, invited guests, on your behalf, I wish to express appreciation to His Excellency Alpha Conde, President of the Republic of Guinea, and outgoing chairperson of our union, for excellent leadership provided during his tenure of office. Thank you, President Conde. Right now, the next item on the agenda is the launch of the
ሰላሳኛው የአፍሪካ የመሪዎች ስብሰባ ዛሬ ከቀትር በኋላ ጀምሮ ነበር። በአሁኑ ሰዓት ላይ ደግሞ ወደ መጠናቀቁ ደረጃ ላይ ደርሷል። እንግዲህ በዛሬው ዕለት የነበረው ውሎ ምን ይመስላል በሚለው ጉዳይ ላይ የአፍሪካ ህብረት ዋና ኮሚሽነር ሙሳ ፋቂ እንዲሁም ደግሞ የአፍሪካ የወቅቱ ሊቀመንበር አልፋ ኮንዴና እንዲሁም ደግሞ የተባበሩት መንግስታት ድርጅት ዋና ጸሐፊ አንቶኒዮ ጉቴሬስ በአፍሪካ በ2017 ላይ እንደ በፈረንጆቹ አቆጣጠር ማለት ነው በተከሰቱ ዋና ዋና ጉዳዮች ላይ ማብራሪያ ወይም ደግሞ ስፒች አድርገዋል። እንግዲህ ከመጀመሪያው ስንጀምር የአፍሪካ ህብረት ዋና ኮሚሽነር ሙሳ ፋቂ በተለይም በዋና ዋና ጉዳዮች የሚባሉ በዚህ በስደት ላይ በስፋት መክረዋል። እሳቸው እንዳሉት በአፍሪካ ያለው በአሁኑ ሰዓት ያለው የስደተኞች በተለይም ደግሞ በህገወጥ መልኩ ያለው ስደት በጣም በከፍተኛ መልኩ አሳሳቢ ሆኗል። ለዚህም ደግሞ ዋነኛ መፍትሄ የሚሆነው ለወጣቶች ስራ መፍጠር እንጂ በሌላ ጉዳዮች ላይ ማተኮር ሳይሆን ለአፍሪካ ወጣቶች ስራ መፍጠር ነው ብለዋል። በሌላ ጉዳይ ደግሞ ከዚህ በአሁኑ ሰዓት ላይ ለምሳሌ የዚህ የናሽናሊዝም ወይም ደግሞ ለሀገር ሀገራት ከሌሎች ጎረቤት ሀገራት ያላቸው ግንኙነት ላይ እየተደከሙ መጥቷል። ለዚህ ደግሞ ዋነኛ መፍትሄ የሚሆነው ሀገራቸውን ክፍት በማድረግ በተለይም በኢኮኖሚ በኢንቨስትመንት መተሳሰር ያላቸውን ትስስር ማጠናከር መቻል አለባቸው ብለዋል። በተለይም በዚህ በቅድም ባነሳሁት በዚህ በስደተኞች ጉዳይ ላይ በአፍሪካ ደረጃ ጉዳዩን ለመፍታት አፍሪካ ህብረት በራሱ ተነሳሽነት የወጣቶችን ኮሚቴ በመመልመል በዚህ ጉዳይ ላይ እንዲሰራም ከሚቀጥለው ሳምንት ጀምሮ ለመስራት ወስኗል። ከዚህ ጋር በተያያዘ የተባበሩት መንግስታት ድርጅት አንቶኒዮ ጉቴሬዝም በስደተኞች ላይ እሳቸውም ሰፋ ያለ ንግግር አድርገዋል። ልክ እንደ ሙሳ ፋቂ ሁላ እሳቸውም በወጣቶች ስራ ፈጠራ ላይ ትኩረት መደረግ መቻል አለበት ብሎ ነው እሳቸውም የተናገሩት። ከዚህ ጋር በተያያዘ በኮራፕሽንም ወይም ደግሞ በዚህ በሙስና ጉዳይ በተያያዘ በአፍሪካ ስፋቱ ምን ያህል ነው በሚለውም ላይ እሳቸውም ተናግረው ነበረ። ለዚህም ላይ ደግሞ በተለይም የሙስና አድራጊዎቹ ሰዎች በህግ መጠየቅ መቻል አለባቸው፣ መቀጣት መቻል አለባቸው የሚል መልእክት አስተላልፈዋል። ከዚህ ጋር በተያያዘም የዚህ የክላይሜት ቼንጅ ወይም ደግሞ የአየር ንብረት ለውጥ ላይ ከፍተኛ ጉዳት እያደረሰ ነው የሚገኘው። ለአፍሪካ በተለይም ለድህነቷ ወይም ደግሞ ለበርካታ ዜጎች የችግር መንስኤው የአየር ንብረት ለውጥ ነው ብለዋል። ለዚህም ደግሞ የአፍሪካ ሀገራት በጋራ መስራት መቻል አለባቸውም ብለዋል። የአፍሪካ ሀገራት ከእርስ በርስ ግንኙነታቸው እንዲሁም ደግሞ ከሌሎች አህጉር ጋር ያላቸው ግንኙነትን በዚሁ መልኩ መጠናከር አለበት ብለዋል። በሶስተኛ ደረጃ ስፒች ያደረጉት ወይም ደግሞ ንግግር ያደረጉት አልፋ ኮንዴ ናቸው። አልፋ ኮንዴ የወቅቱ ሊቀመንበር ናቸው የአፍሪካ ህብረት። እሳቸውም በተመሳሳይ በስደተኞች ላይ እንደዚሁ ጠንከር ያለ መልእክት አስተላልፏል። ወጣቶች ስራ መፍጠርም ዋነኛ መፍትሄ ነው ብለው ተናግረዋል። የአፍሪካ ሀገራት የእርስ በርስ ግንኙነታቸውን በተለይም ደግሞ ከሌሎች የዓለም ሀገራት ጋር ያላቸውን ግንኙነት እንዲሁ ማጠናከር መቻል አለባቸው ብለው ተናግረዋል። ፖሊሲና ስትራቴጂዎችም አፈጻጸማቸውም አሁን ላይ ካለው ደረጃ ይበልጥ መጠናከር መቻል አለበት የሚል መልእክት አስተላልፏል። በመጨረሻ ላይ የወቅቱ ሊቀመንበር የነበሩት የአፍሪካ ህብረት አልፋ ኮንዴ ለሚቀጥሉት 2 ዓመታት ለሩዋንዳው ፕሬዚዳንት ፖል ካጋሜ የሊቀመንበርነቱን ስልጣን አሳልፎ ሰጥቷል። እንግዲህ የዘንድሮ የ30ኛው የአፍሪካ ህብረት የመሪዎች ስብሰባ የዛሬው ውሎ ይሄን ይመስል ነበረ። ነገም ደግሞ በተመሳሳይ በዚህ እንግዲህ እንደጠቀስ ነው የዘንድሮ የመወያያ ርዕስ የሆነው በሙስና ላይም በነገምነት ቀጥሎ የሚሆነው የዛሬው ውሏቸው በዚህ መልኩ ነበር ማለት ይቻላል። አመሰግናለሁ።
of good governance, democratic values, gender equality, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. The United Nations 230 Agenda for Sustainable Development under Goal 16 calls on all countries to promote and develop accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels, notably by reducing bribery and corruption. In this connection, I cannot overemphasize the value of strong institutions, a judiciary which stands firm against arbitrariness and injustice by the executive is a vital pillar in the anti-corruption fight. As leaders, we must build synergy between the executive, legislative, and judicial arms of government in order to entrench good governance, transparency, and accountability. Your Excellencies, strong institutions are a necessary condition in any society which aims to fight corruption. In building strong national and regional institutions, we must adequately empower our national anti-corruption agencies and insulate them from political influence. We have to encourage increased institutional collaboration between law enforcement agencies and anti-corruption agencies in order to win this fight. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is evident that corruption has a devastating impact on marginalized communities, especially the youth, women, and children. Corruption breeds unequal societies, renders vulnerable groups prone to human trafficking, as well as recruitment into armed groups and militia. In effect, corruption deprives our youngsters of opportunities to develop meaningful livelihood. We must therefore work together to defeat this evil. With the endorsement of Your Excellencies, during the course of 2018, I wish to prioritize the following initiatives to help us in the fight against corruption. A, to organize African youth congresses against corruption in order to sensitize and engage our youth in the fight against corruption. B, mobilizing all African Union member states to implement the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. And C, advocating for the strengthening of the criminal justice system across Africa through exchange of information and sharing best practices in the enforcement of anti-corruption laws. The African Union Advisory Board on Corruption should be strengthened in order to play a more proactive role in the anti-corruption fight. We also propose to enlist as partners important actors such as parliamentarians, women associations, the media, the business community, faith-based groups, the youth, educational institutions, and traditional leaders, among others. Excellencies, we also need to redouble our efforts in addressing the causal relationship between corruption and illicit financial flows. The report of the African Union High-Level Panel on Illicit Financial Flows from Africa, chaired by His Excellency Thabo Mbeki, former President of South Africa, in partnership with the United Nations Economic Commission, revealed that Africa loses about $50 billion annually. The high-level panel has also pointed out the corrosive role that tax havens and secrecy jurisdictions play in concealing ill-gotten assets. The African Union must do more to stop the continuous assault on our economic and financial resources by multinationals in collusion with some of our citizens. It is also important that one of the goals of this year's theme should be the development of a common African position on asset recovery. The manifestation of corruption in Africa is also a reflection of the need for stronger leadership and oversight institutions. Tackling corrupt acts and greed require a reorientation of our attitudes and perceptions. During the fight against corruption, we must have a change of mindset. Changing the state of play requires retraining a greater awareness as a means to instill better and more transparent values in the political class and the citizenry, especially people in position of trust. In Nigeria, we have gone far into the implementation of our change agenda, which is primarily aimed at fighting corruption. Excellencies, as we set off on this honorable path, let us also bear in mind that fighting corruption is not going to be a straightforward task, and that corruption does fight back. While we have faced some setbacks, we should remain resolute. Our common goal is to eradicate corruption in the best interest of our societies. Let me end my remarks by reiterating Nigeria's abiding commitment to the fight against corruption today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. Excellencies, Chairperson of the African Union, I am truly inspired in this task by the commitment, encouragement, and support of my fellow African heads of state to succeed in this noble cause. On this note, I officially launch on the theme of the year. I thank you for your kind attention.
Hello, Hubert. Thank you. We are covering the 30th session of the African Union Head of State and Government, starting from starts from the morning. So now we are approaching the end of the today's session of the 30th session of the African Head of State and Government. So would you brief us about what was going on, the discussion inside in the street?
Well, Barakat, as you've seen and we all have seen, Ethiopian News Agency is transmitting live online all this continental issue, which is 30th AU Summit. And probably viewers, you will be hearing and listening and watching this online transmission from here now, all about the issues, various regional, national and continental issues. And for today's opening session of the AU 30th AU Summit, In his opening speech, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Muhammad Faki, has expressed that it's imperative for Africans to keep on demanding and meeting the demands of the youth, which is very crucial in stopping the irregular migration in the coming. In relation to that, he has also urged all the member states to condemn and do all their best in combating the human tragedy and extremely inhuman acts that are happening to migrants in Libya. And based on that, he also even added that decisive actions and dimensions are needed to even combat the corruption, which is mostly related to the illicit financial flows that is devastatingly deteriorating the economic aspects of the continent. And most of all, he also even mentioned the situations, conflict situations in Somalia and Nile Basin and Mali and the Cameroon that need the very crucial attention of the state. And above all, he has mentioned something new about harnessing the youth demographic dividend, which was the thematic issue of the last year of summit. And he also expressed that he himself, as a chairperson of the AU, he said that he will have a special envoy of the youth starting from the coming week, which is a very pleasant way for the African youth to be heard out loud in most of the ways. And mostly these are the center of the ideas that the chairperson have stated and mentioned in his speech, Barakat.
Along with this one, the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, also attended this meeting, and he also tried to mention some of the predicaments of the continent. The one is like the corruption and that of the illicit financial flow. He pointed out that for the eradication of this problem, African countries has to be very much committed in terms of like making this perpetrator of this act to be punished by the law or accountable to be, otherwise the problem will remain the same in the coming years as well. He also tried to look at, as Desta mentioned earlier, he also tried to mention about the migration problem in Africa. He said that like migration by itself is not the problem, but in Africa the problem is like illegal migration. And then he said that for this problem to be easing in Africa, African member state has to be very much committed in terms of like creating a job for the youth. Otherwise, this problem, just like the above one, it also continue in the future as well. He also tried to look at some of the most important pressing issue of our times, that is the climate change. He said that climate change is not only like affecting Africans, but also affecting the world as well. But he said that like the problem in Africa is very devastating. It will also like reach to like the level of like killing so many peoples in Africa. So he very much reiterated that Africans leader has to be very strong in terms of like making all the strategy and policies that are pertinent for like bringing about like the sustainable environmental growth in the continent. In the other one, he also tried to look at the peace and security situation in Africa. He said that like there are some hotspots of the insecurity in Africa, it's that of the Somali, the South Sudan, and that of the Lake Chad Basin, and that of the Mali. He said that he also lauds the troops contributing country in Africa in terms of preserving the peace of the continent. And then finally, he tried to look at the issue of multilateralism. He strongly advised African countries to be more open for international trade and that of investment. Otherwise, development like the inclusive growth would be very difficult to bring about in the continent. So this was some of the points that was raised by the United Nations Secretary General. So I think the next speaker was that of the AU chairperson of the Guinean President Alpha Condé. what were some of the points that was raised by Alpha Conde?
Yes, Barakat, as we have all seen on our live transmission that the new invitees to the AU summit have also been the Secretary General of the Arab League and the President of the Palestine Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, which they have expressed their appreciation for the African Union support in most of their ways. Especially Mahmoud Abbas expressed his firm support that has been extended from the African Union, which standing on their side is, which he expressed it as a way of expressing African Union and its member status in standing according to the law and the humanitarian law, which most of the countries of the world has ratified long years ago. And he expressed that the support that they are gained from the African Union will continue the same way in the coming years. They have also both expressed that they will stand with the African Union and its member status in many ways of cooperation, which is vital for the Arab League and Palestine with the African Union as member status in a long way ties. And as you've said and you have mentioned, Alpha Conde has also expressed his most stressfully expressed that Africa's difficulties are mostly emancipated from the foreign interventionists, be it financial, political, whatsoever. And he underscored that Africans should stand for themselves in a way that they can handle things by themselves, which are in a homegrown way, starting from the financial institutional reforms that they have stated, which today the President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, has reported his financial reports in the closed session earlier today, and which comes, he said, Alpha Conde expressed as the last and emphasized that Africa will no more listen to any of the lectures from anywhere. Instead, Africans will stand by themselves, starting from enhancing their cooperation and strengthening their independence in many of the ways. And this was all what Alpha Conde has expressed in his opening statement. And if there are other things that you would like to add.
So this is all about like what's has actually been like take place in the headquarters of the African Union for 2 days, the certification of the African head of state and government. So I think they're gonna be like UN General Assembly, the UN General, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will brief the media after this one. So there's nothing new from now on. So the today's session is all about this one. So tomorrow we'll continue about the live stream of the Ethiopian News Agency. Thank you for tuning. Stay tuned for tomorrow too. Thank you.
Developing gonadotropin releasing hormone analogs for use in a wide range of clinical pathologies. His research opened up market for the primary treatment of prostatic cancer, precocious puberty, the sole treatment, and the hormone-dependent diseases in women, for example, endometriosis, and for in vitro fertilization. Since 2016, he is the director of the Center of Neuroendocrinology at the University of Pretoria. A round of applause as I invite the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Dr. Musa Faki Mahamat, to kindly give the prize to Professor Robert Peter Miller from South Africa. $100,000 US check, a plaque, and a certificate. So we quickly have the group pictures. Thank you. Thank you. Excellencies, Excellencies, it is very important we thank the European Union for making this award possible by providing financial and technical support since the inception of this program in 2010. And allow me to also acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, Mr. Minister Nevin, the EU Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development. Finally, I would like to invite Professor Malik Mazda from Algeria to say a word on behalf of the winners of the 2017 prestigious African Union Kwame Nkrumah Award for Scientific Excellence Continental Prize. Welcome.
Félicitations.